The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. I'm very excited to be here with you on this Thursday. It is back to school time of year. There's a lot going on in the world, I know, for all of us. If you have a child who is younger than school age, I know that you're still, if you're here with us, then you're still concerned about getting your child ready for school. So it affects literally all of us, right? And even those of you who are older and are on the spectrum yourself, I know that this still affects you. There's a different feel in the air as we all go back to school. Even the traffic patterns are different. Have you noticed? I mean, I live here in Los Angeles, and it's been significantly different in the last couple of days. Everybody keeps talking about going, what's going on? It's back to school, and everything starts to function in a different way. And so we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to talk about a lot of other things. We'll be with you live for the next 2 hours. We try to look at autism from a 360-degree perspective because it's very easy to pigeonhole and say, oh, well, it affects this, but the truth of the matter is it really affects all of us in a much more global way. So we try to look at all the different things that you have on your plate and at some point visit each one of those things. But the entire show is meant to be interactive. We hope that you will participate with us by letting us know the kinds of things that you want us to discuss here, the kinds of experts, the kinds of guests that you want to have us here on the show, the topics that you want us to discuss, and that you will put your 2 cents into the discussion. I know that in the last couple of days we've been talking about this horrible story coming out of Canada, the letter that someone left on a grandmother's doorstep, the grandmother that takes care of a child, her grandson with autism, because her daughter has MS and needs some help and support. We can all understand that, right? And somebody left a really horrible letter on that grandmother's doorstep, and we've covered a lot on the show. Somebody wrote in during the night and said, can we sue this woman who wrote this letter publicly? What is her name? She signed it, one pissed off mother. And, you know, I say she, but there's really quite a question right now about, was this the work of one person? Was it a female? Was it a male? What was the age of this person? There's lots of discussion about that. But at this time, I don't think that anybody knows who, in fact, wrote the letter. So, yeah. You know, as lovely as it would be to publicly sue, it's not an option at this point in time, but we do have the ability to talk about these things, to talk about what it's like when neighbors are upset when your child is making noise, to talk about what it's like financially when you have to put your child with somebody else, what it's like when those people are aging, right? We talk about all these things, and we hope that you will write into us and tell us your feelings about this letter. Nancy Alspaugh Jackson was with us yesterday. We're both autism moms. And I said, I think the hardest part about it is that every autism parent who reads that letter, there's at least one line in it that you've heard in some way, shape, or form said about your kid, right? It affects all of us. So this is a forum in which you can talk about your feelings about that. You know, what line really rings home for you about how people have treated you or how people have treated your child. We'd love to talk to you about it. Emily's going to cycle through some of the different ways you can get in touch with us here on the show, and there's lots of different ways to watch the show. Yesterday, we launched a very new and exciting way to watch the show. You know, I'm always saying to you, the only place to watch us live is www.autism-live.com. Well, that's not true anymore. As of yesterday, you can watch us live at www.autism-live.com, but you can also watch us on our YouTube channel live, which enables us, by the way, that you can be watching us on your pads, your tablet devices, your iPad, you can watch it on your Nobby, you can watch it on your Android tablet. Have at. We appreciate that you can now do that. I will remind you, though, that when you watch us live at autism-live.com, and you can watch us now on your pads at that site as well, there is a white box there that is active 24 hours a day, 7 days a week now. Put your cursor there, type, hit enter. When you do, it shows up magically right here on my screen, and you and I get to have a conversation. Yep, sometimes I forget to look down because I get so involved in talking with you. But, you know, write into me as often as you want, and then I'll get more used to looking down. And it is a great way for you to ask our experts in real time. I always say to people, you know, start asking your question. Don't wait until we're winding down with the expert. What happens a lot of the time, I don't know whether there's a 30-second delay or a 1-minute delay on how, you know, it types and then you hit enter, and how long it takes for that message to go through the air to end up on my screen. I always say it's instant, but I think there's, you know, maybe a 30-second or a minute delay. And what happens a lot of times is we've said goodbye to the expert and we've gone on to a commercial, and that's when your question comes in. So try to send your question for the experts a little bit earlier. That's all. Get in early. That's my advice to you. But we hope that you will participate with us in that way. And by the way, it's totally free. You don't have to log on. You don't give us a credit card number. We don't even know your name. If you want us to get back to you because there's information that you want, a lot of times our experts will say, oh, I can email you this or do whatever. If you want to give us an email address or some way to get in contact with you, you can, and I can edit that out so that the rest of the world cannot see that. So, and also I always remind you, be specific when you're writing in so that I know what it is that you're talking about, because you might be watching during a tape portion of the show. And if you say, can she send me this? And I've had 5 female guests. I don't know which she you're talking about. So be as specific as possible when you write in on the live feature. All right. We like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. Now, I always like to remind you guys that I'm not an expert in autism, right? If you hang out long at all, you know that for sure. I'm a parent, and when I started in the world of autism, when my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, I'd gone through a period of denial, let's be honest about that, and then I sort of hit the ground running and said, okay, what do we have to do? I'm on board, what do we have to do? And the first kind of 5 people I asked came back with a bunch of jargon. And that made me go, oh, I might be in over my head. And then I got angry about the jargon for about, 2 years, and would say to people, hey, can you not talk to me like that? Is it not clear that I don't have a degree in psychology and I don't have a degree in autism? Can you talk to me like a person and tell me what those words that you're saying mean? And I was a little militant about it. Now that my son is 10, I realized after about 2 years of anger and resentment about the jargon that you just have to make friends with it. You just have to. It's one of those things, but you can't be overwhelmed by it. So we take it a little bit at a time, trying to make sense of these words. And I love that when you guys write into us, you're now using these words, and when you're talking to experts, you're using these words. Dr. Grant Pichet said yesterday, one of our viewers came here to the office last week and had their child evaluated and got to meet with Dr. Grant Pichet, and I got to meet them. They got to come in the studio, and Dr. Grant Pichet was saying, I was amazed. This woman knew all these words. She was asking these great questions. It was amazing. So it pays off. It pays off. So today's acronym is something that we talk about a lot here, and it's a worthwhile one to know. It's FBA. Yes, and better? And so in any case, I used to get so confused about this one. I always called it, that FBI thing. That FBI, bring in the FBI. Let's do the FBI. It's an FBA, okay? And what an FBA is, our actual definition, it stands for Functional Behavior Assessment. Now, here's one of the pluses about jargon. If you know jargon terms just enough to be able to use them correctly in meetings, people get an idea of, oh, I'm dealing with a parent, or oh, I'm dealing with a teacher, oh, I'm dealing with a grandmother, or I'm dealing with an individual on the spectrum who knows their stuff. This is one of those terms. You want to be careful, because my understanding, if you say functional behavioral assessment, then they know you don't know what you're talking about. So, right? So you got to be clear. And you're not really ever going to have to say functional behavior assessment. You can just say FBA. So what is it? It's a multi-step problem-solving assessment process designed to determine the function of a behavior. Okay, what does that mean? Let's move on to our working definition. An FBA, still a functional behavior assessment. It's an essential process that helps us understand why a challenging behavior is happening so that we can change it effectively. We talk about on the show all the time, it's like principle number one, I refer to it, that in order for any behavior to keep happening, there has to be some sort of paycheck that it's getting. If your child is spitting on the playground, it's because there's something that they're getting out of it. And there's lots of things that it could be, and we never want to assume. And this is where stuff goes wrong all the time, is that we or someone else assumes. We see a kid spitting on the playground and we go, oh, they're spitting because well, the first worst thing that people think is because it's just a bad child. There's no such thing as a bad child. There's no bad child. There's behavior that we could classify as quote unquote bad. I prefer to call it challenging behavior, because bad, what's bad? But our kids aren't wrong. Sometimes their behavior is challenging, but it's there as a form of communication, and it's there because in some way it's working. Now, a kid might try on a behavior once or twice to see what happens when it happens, but if nothing happens that's rewarding, they don't do it again. And by the way, it's not just kids, and it's not just kids on the autism spectrum. That's all of us. You might say, hey, I'm going to the gym. I'm gonna, when you go once or twice or 3 times, and then you just don't go anymore because it wasn't rewarding enough. Kids do the same thing. So if a kid has been spitting on the playground and they've done it like 6 times, it's now crossed over into challenging behavior. There is for sure some sort of paycheck why the child is doing it. But if we just assume and we go, oh, well, they're doing it to get attention. That child is doing that to get attention. We might be right, but if we start trying to intervene on this behavior and say, okay, the reason why the function, the paycheck of this behavior, the reason why that behavior is there, and we call it the function of the behavior, is attention. So we're going to remove the attention element from it and see, now, if that truly were the function of the behavior and we remove the paycheck, the behavior should stop. We know scientifically that that's what happens with behavior. But if we remove the attention and the behavior is still there, then guess what? Attention wasn't what was the function of that behavior. It may be that the child is spitting to get out of something, right? And we removed the attention, but we didn't remove their ability to get out of something. So what happens in an FBA is it's a multi-step process. There are many things to it, but somebody who's trained to do an FBA does this multi-step process where first they're going to go and they're going to interview the people who see the behavior. So if you're the parent, you're going to get interviewed, and probably the teacher, and if it's happening on the playground, somebody on the playground is going to get interviewed. They might even talk to the child about it, right? Then there's other things that they're going to do along the way to determine what reasonably is the function of this behavior. Once they've done that, FBA, then they can set up an intervention that's going to be efficient and effective. Because when we guess, we waste time and we run the risk of making the behavior worse. If I see that a child is biting and I assume that because I didn't want to do an FBA, and I go, oh, I'm fairly confident that it's because the child wanted attention. And so I cut off attention from it, but the child is biting more. I run the risk of somebody else getting hurt, and whatever it was that was reinforcing that behavior, it's just that much more reinforcing, right? So we never want to guess. I always go back to the example of cars. You know, when you got a problem with your car and something is happening with your car, we all have a gut instinct, right? We go, oh, I think it's this. I think it's the starter. I absolutely think it's the starter. But we don't go, great, I'm going to rip the starter out and I'm going to have a new starter put in and I'm going to write that $600 check. No problem. We don't do that. And there's a reason why, because none of us, well, I don't know, some of you might be, but I'm not a trained mechanic. So I don't say, my hunch is that it's the starter, so let's rip it out. That would cost us money and that would take time. And we don't have time for that kind of stuff. So what do? We drive the car to the mechanic and we say to the mechanic, you know what, it's doing this, this, and this. I think it's the starter. And the mechanic goes, great, I'm going to look at the starter first. But how often does the mechanic come back and go, not the starter, it's the alternator? Because I did this test to see if it was the starter and it wasn't the starter, it's the alternator. And you go, great, let's change the alternator. And we write the check for the alternator. Why do we think we should do something different with our children? I'm saying drive your child to the mechanic for behavior, get the expert, behavioral expert in there. They do the FBA. And by the way, at school, if somebody is writing you notes and saying, oh, well, you know, your child engaged in this behavior at home today, so this is what's going on with this, you know, blah, 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 blah. If you're seeing notes coming home saying your child is engaging in a behavior, it's time to ask for an FBA. Don't mess around. Don't let them devise an intervention without an FBA at school. Ask, you know, and one of the first things to do to ask at the IEP meeting that you have, or the first day of school, whatever it is that's changed, say, and if we need an FBA, who's going to do that? Who's going to do an FBA if we need one? Know ahead of time, right? It will. I can't even tell you, knowing to say, well, let's do an FBA can save your child's placement. It can save your child's educational year. By the way, you don't just do it at school, you can do it at home as well, but it's a different group of people and they should do it for you for free at the school. What a good thing. So an FBA is a fabulous thing. Okay, moving on. We always have a question of the day for you. Today is no different. Our question today is, what do you feel is preventing your child from full inclusion? We've been talking about inclusion this week, and I know that probably for all of us, the dream is full inclusion. And one of the things that we've been hearing from our experts, and by the way, we've got a great expert who couldn't be with us this week, but Dr. Mike Dorsey is going to be with us on Monday morning in the first hour talking about inclusion. I had a chance to speak to him on the phone yesterday, and I'm so excited that he's going to be with us. He is the expert in placement for children here in the United States and gets hired as a consultant, and really, if you know, I get the great privilege of meeting people all the time who will go to the mat for our kids, and he is one of those people. He's the real deal. So we're thrilled. He's going to be talking with us about inclusion on Monday, and if you have questions about inclusion, send them early for Dr. Mike Dorsey. My question to all of us who are wanting that full inclusion, what do you think's preventing? What's your gut say? Is it skills that your child is missing? Is it that your school administrator doesn't believe in full inclusion? Is it that the teacher doesn't know how to do it and nobody has trained the teacher how to do it? Do you feel like the other parents are against it? I want to know, what do you feel like is the stumbling block for you? Because I think it's different for different people, and we want to talk about some of those stumbling blocks and how you get over them. So that's our question for today. We always have a topic of the week, and our topic this entire week has been inclusion. It's something that you guys asked us to do a week long of shows on. I will tell you that it was my brilliant, not so brilliant, I'm being sarcastic, idea that we cover it this week when kids are going back to school. The problem with that is that a lot of our inclusion specialists are very busy at this time of year. Duh. So it's working out that we're having some people in talking about it, but as I said, we're having Dr. Mike Dorsey, one of the experts that you guys had specifically asked that we have on the show is too busy. I don't even want to say her name because she's too busy. and I don't want to tease you with it, but you know, she can't be here. So, but we have other experts, and Dr. Mark Dorsey, brilliant inclusion specialist. Some of the things that we have going on today, we're going to be taking on the myth of the day. We're also going to take on some inclusion tips, things that we can be doing to smooth the path in all those different things and get over some of the challenges. And then in the second hour, we're going to have Angela Persicke is going to be here with us. She is a BCBA, and we're going to be talking to her about inclusion and a bunch of other stuff as well. And she will be taking your questions live here with us. So we are going to take a break, and we're going to be back with the myth of the day. Stick with us. We are here at Dodger Stadium. We happen to be here on Autism Awareness Day. We can't wait to meet, greet, and see all the wonderful people that are here and take part in this.
I don't care if we never get back.
We're here with the beautiful and lovely Holly Robinson Pete, who's getting ready to sing the national anthem here. Are you excited about singing this?
I am excited, but I am a little nervous.
The whole family's here, I see.
Yes, words of encouragement from my 8-year-old, Mom, don't fail.
We are here with the fabulous, funny, and talented George Lopez. And you're throwing out what?
I'm throwing out the first pitch, and Holly is singing, so it's a good night.
You see by the dawn's early light.
Who are you here with?
My amazing son, Lukey, who is my inspiration to do what we do every day. And Autism Speaks is just a wonderful supporter, and we're glad we're here, part of this joyous celebration. And it's really exciting to watch his excitement.
What is your son's name?
Christian.
Christian. Are you having a good time?
Yeah.
Yes. Who do you think is going to sign your baseball?
Matt Kemp.
Kim.
My daughter Megan, who's 11 and was diagnosed with autism at 2, is going to take the field with Puig. Woo!
You're going to be beside yourself.
I'm thrilled. I am so excited that all these people are here for autism awareness. It's amazing.
Forrest 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Welcome back. It's time for our myth of the day. We haven't done the myth in a while, but our topic this entire week is inclusion. And I have learned so much through this process because I believed in the myth that all children should be included in terms of what we mean by inclusion in the classroom. And I have learned something here. And of course, there's the myth on the other side that inclusion doesn't work, right? The truth is wildly someplace in the middle, as it frequently is. What I have learned from our experts is that inclusion is something that all kids are entitled to work towards. But there are some kids that it is not going to be beneficial for them in this current moment. And there's a lot of different reasons why it's not beneficial for them that have to do with the child and also that have to do with the setting. And the thing that experts have been reminding me in the last few months and reminding me all this week, and in some of the conversations that I've been having with people on the phone, is that it's absolutely key that our first goal needs to be that the child is in an environment in which they are safe and in which they are productive, that we are moving towards gold goals, and that the setting has to be right. We have to have people on board, and we have to have people that are trained. And if we can't have that, that isn't necessarily the best safe and productive environment for children. That, I will say, as an autism mother, makes me a little bit, I don't want to say angry. I don't know whether the word resentful is even right, but it seems to me that it should become a priority to make sure then that all schools who are offering anything that even remotely resembles inclusion should be making sure that their staff is trained in the best possible way. And I guess frightened is the word, that isn't what is in place in a lot of schools. And of course, it just adds to another thing on the list of things. I don't know about you, but sometimes I go, okay, well, that's another thing that we need to get done. We need to find the way to make sure that school staff can be trained in the proper way, because I have a feeling that more kids could be included, which we need to be working towards if we just trained the individuals who are doing the work. I'm beginning to understand how difficult a task that is. I don't think I completely understand, but I'm beginning to understand how monumental that task is, training staff to be able to do this well. But you know what? We've faced other monumental things before, and we know that the way in which we get that done is to start on the path. And so I want to invite all of you to join me in working to make that happen one teacher at a time. If you have a child who is in a school someplace and you are working towards inclusion, or you have inclusion, but you think that it could be better, I want to invite you to invite your teacher or your aides or your principal or your school superintendent to get more training. There's lots of different kinds of training that's out there and available. The one that I love and that I use is IBT, the Institute for Behavioral Training, just because it's easy, it's effective, and it's low cost. So for as low as $7.50 a module, you can pick a topic on their website and you can pay for it yourself. For, like I said, as low as $7.50, you can buy a module and give it to the teacher and say, I would appreciate it if you would watch this and get some training on these kinds of things. And inclusion is absolutely one of them. So one person at a time, one teacher at a time, one school site at a time, to help all of our kids be able to work towards inclusion when it is right for them and remove all the other stumbling blocks. I hate to think that there's a child that's out there that's ready to be included, but their teacher isn't ready to include them. That doesn't feel right. So we will work on that one teacher at a time. Stick with us. We're going to be back with more after these messages.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity.
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with it.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Autism Live. You know, on Tuesday we got so busy we didn't have time to do our healthy eating tip, and so I wanted to share with you today because it's back to school, so we're talking about school lunches. Oh my goodness, are we not all overwhelmed with this? Just want to give a couple of quick guidelines and things that people have asked me to consider as a parent, because I've said to some of our experts, you know, what kinds of things do we want to put in the lunches? And I don't know about how your school structures it, but my child gets a snack and then he gets a lunch. And this year, because he's in 5th grade, the lunch comes a little bit later. And so I was asked to think and consider that the snack has to be a little bit more filling and give him a little bit more energy to get to the lunchtime. So some of the things that we consider, and I do the purchasing for the stuff in the school lunches, but my husband does the packing now, which is a brilliant thing. And I want to encourage all of you, if there's a way that you can get your husband to do that, or your significant other to do that, I encourage you to do that. Have one person do the shopping and one person do the other. Because for a lot of years, it was just me. And I have seen what a great thing it is for my husband to take part in this and to have a responsibility in this, and he's doing an excellent job too. So we absolutely love that. But I do most of the shopping for it. So, and this year, because my son is older, we started weeks ago shopping for things that were non-perishable. And I do think that as much as it's important to make sure that there is something healthy and fresh in every single lunch, as much as possible as parents, we need to be able to stockpile things that are non-perishable so that it's not that thing at 7:30 in the morning where you're like, oh no, we don't have anything. Or equally horrifying, you know, it's Tuesday and it's 11:30 at night and somebody has to go to the grocery store because you've thought ahead of it, right? So there are things, and I was thrilled this year more than any other year that you can get juice boxes that are not entirely all juice and that are not entirely all sugar. I think that there is an expectation a lot of times at school about, well, we have to give these kids enough sugar to get them through school. As a former school teacher, I want to say to you, use big caution when you start thinking that way, because let's remember that if you're putting sugar into a child's system, yeah, they're going to get a buzz on it and then they're going to crash. So think of when you're packing a lunch, putting complex carbohydrates in there instead of sugar. I'm not saying that a little bit of fruit sugar goes amiss. Each child is different, right? But we don't want a child to be crashing. We get, believe me, I used to see, I taught 7th graders, and I would see what they would have for their snack, and they would have a soda and Cheetos. And for the first 15 minutes of class after that snack period, it would be about getting them to settle and breathe. And then it would be, you know, because they would crash. So plan ahead. There are some lovely juice boxes, though, that have things in them that are mostly water. Sometimes it's coconut water, which is very refreshing. We know that it has the ability to put electrolytes into a child without raising their blood sugar. Ooh, we love that. And sometimes they mix the coconut water with lemon so that it's a lemonade flavored coconut water. Other times it's just plain water. I was able to find a really great juice box at Whole Foods Market that was a lemonade that was only lemon juice and water. Very alkalizing. My son has loved it. Thought that it looks just like all the other kids, but he's not getting loaded up in sugars. But he thinks that he's having a wonderful little treat. I can buy a case of those and have them in the house so that they're there and available, and I don't have to constantly be thinking and reinventing that wheel. So you look for things like that. I also think that to a certain extent, buying things that are in small portions so that you don't have to be wrapping them in other bags, and you know, it streamlines the process. I love having those teeny tiny, Paul Newman's company makes those teeny tiny little raisin boxes. I'm not talking about those ones that we always used to get when we were kids. Those are a little bit too big of a portion, quite actually. And it takes the child too long to eat them, and they're not out on the playground running it off. But Newman's Own makes teeny tiny little raisin boxes that are organic. You have to love that. Thank you, Paul Newman. And a portion of the proceeds goes to help charities. So I recommend things like that. And then finding the things, we want to make sure that the things that we send in the lunch are things that the child will actually eat. So finding something that really flips their switch. That's why I took my son this time and said, what would you like to have in your lunch? And noticing when the lunch comes back, what gets eaten and what doesn't get eaten. For a long time, we were chopping up peppers in different colors and sending them off to school. And I don't know what happened, but you know, he's out of the notion of peppers for this period of time. Make sure that you alternate. Another great thing that's great in the lunch things is the seaweed snacks. They're fabulous. Again, alkalizing. They taste like potato chips. We just got a new kind. I didn't know that it was possible, but again, at Whole Foods we found organic. Gotta love the organic seaweed snacks. And these have a sesame flavor to them. And my son said, oh, Mom, they're so good. I want more of them. And you can By the way, if you're going to any store at all, I happen to know that if you go to Whole Foods and you ask to buy something in the case, you get a discount. I believe it's 10% discount, but ask in any store and say, if I buy a case, can I get a discount on it? It's a great way to save money. Stockpile for those lunches so that it's automated, you're varying it, but you've got these 5 things to choose from. Always put something fresh in. I have cuties. I actually have one here today, these lovely little organic oranges. This is the perfect size so that we're not overdoing what a child has. It's a great size to get them that little bit of fruit sugar, get them out on the playground. They're not sitting there endless, and they're easy to peel too. Get them organic or at least sustainably grown where they're not using pesticides. The school lunches, we can do this, but make it as easy for yourself as possible. Stick with us. We're going to be right back after these messages.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides programs to educate students, parents, and professionals proven techniques using applied behavior analysis. Access online video lessons with IBT eLearning. Get one-on-one personalized instruction with IBT face-to-face training. Acquire professional guidance with IBT BCBA supervision. Develop professional growth with IBT continuing education courses. Get access to IBT services today. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We like to give you tips on how to save money here because a big part of our journey in terms of autism is figuring out how we're going to pay for our child's therapies, how we're going to pay for keeping the roof over our head, how we're going to put food on the table that's nutritious and that our children will enjoy, and keep it all together. And unfortunately, that money question gets in the way of all those different objectives all the time. So if you can save a buck, you can use it to do some of those things that are on your mission statement about making sure that your kids are healthy and educated and able to do what they need to do in life. And we had something happen in our household last night, and I said to my husband, I need to go in and talk about this on the show. But we need to talk about this in hushed tones because we don't necessarily want the world to know that we're talking about this because then it'll change. But when my son had autism, I spent a lot of time, I had to be at home so that he could have therapy coming in. And it meant that I was working from home and we had to save every single dollar that we could. And one of the things that I did was I started calling all of the people that we had services with. For instance, calling the cable company and saying to them, hey, is there any way that I can reduce my bill? Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, right? And you think, well, sure, there's a way you can reduce the bill, turn it off. Or sure, there's a way you can reduce the bill, you can cut some of the services that you have. And that's an option, and that's something that you need to look at when you look at your budget and say, okay, so we're trying to do this. Can we afford to have premium channels? But I want to suggest to you that there's something else that some people know in the world that I did not know before my child was on the autism spectrum, and I called and made this first phone call. That there are a lot of businesses that there is a way that you can negotiate your rate. I know it sounds crazy, but it happens to be true. This is true for insurance. This is true for your cable bill, your phone bill, your internet bill, for your cell phone bill. It's true of your credit card rates, right? You need to be careful about what you say when you call these people, but you can negotiate a better rate. And I had forgotten about this for a while, but my husband and I were sitting there looking at the cable bill, and I went, why is this so high? And he said, I don't know, it just got high. All of a sudden it just got high. And I got on the phone, and then I remembered, oh, the reason why this all of a sudden got high is because I had negotiated a better rate for a period of time. And you can do this. So this is how this goes. I called the cable company yesterday, as I did many years before, and I said, hi, I'd like to talk to somebody because my bill is really high and I've looked at my budget and I want to reduce it. And I'm thinking that I might go and be with another service. That's an important sentence to include in it because then they go, oh, I'm about to lose a customer. Key to this is knowing who your other providers are in the area and knowing whether you're under contract. Because if you are under contract, you need to know when the contract expires. So let's say that you're doing this with your cell phone and you know that you are under contract for another 6 months. You're not going to have as much negotiating power as if you only have 2 months left on your contract, right? Because they know you might switch. They want to retain your business. In fact, most businesses that have these kinds of services have an area that's called retention. So what I did yesterday, I spoke to the person on the cable bill. I said, just the regular person that I got on the phone, I said, hi, very nice. And I didn't say, I have a child and we have all these bills. I just said, I'm looking at my budget and I want to reduce my bill. It seems kind of high to me. And he said, wow, yeah, it seems kind of high to me too. And so he made me an offer. And he said, well, how about this? How about if we keep, because I said, we have HBO and I love HBO. And he asked me a bunch of questions about what do we have, what do we like? I said, well, I love my HBO, but I'm willing to let it go. But if I don't have to let it go, I don't want to. And I have a friend who told me that she's getting a much better package from another service. He says, well, I don't want you to lose HBO. How about if I give you HBO for free? And I said, oh my gosh, that's great. I really appreciate it. He goes, I'll give you HBO free for 3 months. I said, wow, that's really great. And in my head, I'm thinking, that's not really going to put a dent in this bill. And I pretty much said that to him and said, but unfortunately, I think, if I were to go and sign up with this other business, and they know that if I go and sign up with this other business, they're going to give me incentive to do that. They're going to give me a whole bunch of stuff for free. So I said, I don't know, I think I just need more than that. So it went from getting HBO free for 3 months to he was also going to reduce my bill by $30 for 6 months. Now we're talking, right? This is making a little bit of sense. But there's always more room to push. And I said, gee, I just don't know. The other bill was going to be less than that. So I think I probably need to talk to them and clarify with them and I'm not saying that, because, the next thing they're going to say is, oh, well, what did they offer you? I said, I want to clarify with them what comes with that package that they're offering that's less than that. And he said, please, let's not do that. Can I put you through to retention? And I said, oh, I'd love to go through to retention. And you can ask to be put through to retention. So he puts me through to retention, and I got on the phone with this very lovely woman, and I said, look, here's the deal. I really need to get this bill lower. He was very sweet and offering me a deal for 3 and 6 months, but, I really don't have the time to be calling back every 6 months and renegotiating my deal. What can you do for me? And my time is almost up because I need to go and get supper on the table. And she said, okay, give me just 1 second. And she came back and said, we want to keep all of your services the way that they are, but we want to take the whole bill and lower it by $65 for a year. Bingo. So, and I said, yes, that would be great. And so that is what we did. I got $65 off of my cable bill for an entire year, retaining all the services that I have. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm like, so I could have had it for $65 less all along, and I did, and then it went up. It's a little maddening, but it took me a total of 10 minutes on the phone. And so for that $65 over the course of a year, it adds up. It really adds up. And I can take that money, and that $65 goes to my son's medicines. That $65 can go to piano lessons every month. I mean, it's crazy when you stop and think about it. So I encourage you, as you're looking at the family budget, to get on the phone, be nice, be sweet, do a lot of listening, but threaten very nicely and say, I think I might have to go with another company. You know what happens if you're really nice and say, well, and keep it vague and say, well, I guess I'm going to call the other company to see what they can offer me. Then you haven't said, well, shut off my service, right? But then they come across with things that make it easier for you to spend that money in other ways that are more useful for your children. So take a look at your cable bill, take a look at your cell phone bill, and if you have to, cut out some of the services, because you can do that in addition. I could have said to her yesterday on the phone, you know what, that's great, let's take the $65 off, and how about if we, lose this, that, or the other thing as well. But I was thrilled with $65. I was like, and stop and think about, it took 10 minutes and how much money that was. I made more money in my pocket in that 10 minutes than I would doing anything else. So word to the wise, negotiate it, and you can get that bill down. Spend it for other things. And if you need more tips on that, I'm good for that. So write and tell me. Stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
for the month of August, I figured we'd do some fun in the sun activity. We're gonna make our very own frozen bowling game. It's super fast and super easy. I was inspired by some lessons I saw in skills. All right, so let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are water, water bottles, balloon, and food coloring, which is always optional. First step you're gonna do is make your bowling ball, since it'll have to freeze overnight. The first thing I'm gonna do is take my balloon and put a few drops of food coloring in it. This is optional. If you don't have food coloring or your child has an allergy to it, don't use it, but I thought it'd be fun to make everything super colorful. So, I have my food coloring. I'm gonna put a few drops in here. And then, take it to the sink and fill it up with water and tie a knot. Here's my balloon filled with water and the food coloring. I'm gonna take this and place it in the freezer with some towels, just so it holds its shape better. Our next step is to make the bowling pins. I have 10 recycled water bottles that I've refilled with water. Now I'm gonna put some food coloring in them.
Straight to the center at full speed. Light will surround you in a blink of an eye.
Now that my bowling ball is frozen and my pins have been filled with water, let's go outside and play with these.
See all the colors in the sky tonight. It's time to let the sunshine hide.
I hope you and your family have fun with the frozen bowling game like I did with my friend Emily. Well, until next time, craft on, guys. Bye.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back. It's time to look at your answers to our question of the day. And we've been talking about inclusion, and I asked you guys to write in specifically about what do you feel is preventing your child from full inclusion. And you still have time to write in if you want to, or write in on the live feature. But I was interested to see what kinds of things, because I think it is different for different people. And in order to really be helpful to you, we have to figure out what's in your way. So one person wrote in and said the public school system is what's in their child's way for full inclusion. And I think that that's going to be the case in a lot of circumstances, unfortunately. But it really makes me stop and consider how are you going to attack it? Is my question for you. How are you going to, and because you've got some choices before you, right? If I really felt that my child's ability to be included in a classroom setting, and that my child was ready for it, but the public school system was not ready for it, I would be asking myself, do I want to invest the time to help this public school system have their brilliant aha moment with inclusion and make this happen? Is that something I realistically can do? Do I have the stomach for it? Do I have the backbone for it? And am I ready and in good health to take that on? And somebody has to. It may not be you, though, and I want you to know that it doesn't have to be you. But we talked with Dr. Grampiche yesterday about sometimes it just takes one mom or one dad who stands up and says, look, this is how this is going to go, and they got to have the stomach for it, got to have the backbone for it, but when they do, it helps everybody who comes behind them. Having said that, we have also seen parents that have taken things on when they weren't ready and it was to the detriment of their child. So you really have to weigh that and go, am I the person? Because there might be a different fight that you're the person for. And don't feel bad about that. That doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means your priority has to be to help your child. And if helping your child means that you're going to go and take on the school district and that you're going to be able to be healthy while you do that, great. And I'd love to help you to do that. But if you say, I just can't, I'm not in good health, I'm not in a good place mentally, my child needs me this many hours a day and I can't fight them and do this, it's okay. It's totally okay, and that's a good decision too. But then you have to make a decision about what am I going to do for my child then? Am I going to move my child to a different setting? Can I afford to do that? Is that within my financial means? Do I need to sue the school district and say, you either need to do it here at the school setting or you need to pay for it at the private setting? And by the way, Many people have done that, but again, you have to have some resources to be able to do that, and you have to be willing to take them on. Or are you going to try to take it on just with each individual classroom? So you're not taking on the whole school system, but you're just taking on the individual teacher. And I think what's key there is knowing that you've got a teacher who's willing to work with you. So, you know, you really got to look at all those things and go, what's my best bet here? How am I going to be the most useful to my child? And how am I going to stay the most sane? For some of us, it's, you know, I got to choose to, you know, focus on my child and not changing the world. For other people, you know, and there are times when I'm like, no, I'm not going to be sane if I don't take this on. So, but you know, you can't take on everything. You got to pick and choose. And if you're going to take on the school district, then, you know, you can't take on somebody else. You know what they say about you can't win a land war in Asia, right? Right? One front at a time, right? Otherwise, forget it. So once you've made your decision, then you got a lot of different pathways to go down. And none of them will be easy. You know, which is the great unfortunate thing. If the public school system doesn't want to meet you on the playground to play with inclusion, it makes it much harder. Makes it much harder. But things change. People retire. New people come in. People get educated. People see the light. People have the aha moment. If you want to help your school have the aha moment, if you want to help your teacher have the aha moment, there are resources. I mentioned IBT. There are other resources that are out there as well to help them to figure it out. But it takes time. It takes training. Another person said language, that language is preventing their child from full inclusion. Now, I'm assuming that it's the child does not have enough language capability to keep up in the classroom. And so my first go-to on that is there functional communication? I just don't know in terms of, is it that the child is nonverbal, and that's what's, because there are nonverbal children who can fly in included classrooms if they're given the right technology and a teacher who's trained to technology. Because that's entirely doable. That's entirely doable. If there's but the first component is that you got to have the technology, and the child has to be trained to the technology, and then you have to train the teacher to the technology. Kids in the classroom, they already get the technology. You don't have to train them to that. A child can understand. You know, one child bops something out on a tablet and another child hears it speak and they get it. It just takes a little bit more for those of us who are not 8, because we weren't indoctrinated into technology the way kids are now today. Kids just accept. Now, if it's that the child is speaking but there isn't enough language, then my question is, do you want to augment with a device so that they have the ability to go back and forth between the two? Because whatever it is, this is something that you want to make sure that the child is getting what they need so that they can go into the inclusion. Because if language is all that's holding them back, that's doable. Infinitely doable. Be working with your ABA provider or get skills, get those language skills under control, and if you need to, go to that augmentative device. Another person who says communication, which I'm assuming same thing. I am appalled when I hear that we've got kids that are nonverbal, that are sitting in special day classrooms and they're working on worksheets and we're not doing anything to teach them functional communications. If you are listening to me and your child is nonverbal and is not able to communicate enough to state what their desires are or what's going on with them in any way, then write into me and let's talk about what augmentative device you're going to get and how you're going to get it and how you're going to make it written into that IEP, that technology and working on that technology is included in your child's IEP so that your child gets functional communication, not next year, but next week. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that makes me nuttier than anything else. I'm amazed sometimes about these educators who don't understand. Now, I can get mad at them But there's no point. They just need to be trained. We need to let them know. I don't know why it doesn't occur to them, because if we had a child who came in who did not have the use of their legs, they'd be looking for crutches. They would. They would be looking for crutches, or they would be saying, we need to get this child a wheelchair. I've worked with people who have teachers who have had a child in the classroom who needed a wheelchair and the family couldn't afford it and they raised money for it. So I don't understand why any educator would be in a room with somebody for more than 2 days who didn't have functional communication and wouldn't be trying to teach functional communication. But the problem is that there are educators who don't know that that's what needs to be done. That's okay. We can teach them that. We can teach them that, and we can push for it. We can include it in the IEP, which is the legal document, and force them to do it. You know, if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. And then somebody else said untrained staff and or people who believe separate is equal. Yeah, well, one person at a time, we take this on. And I would say to you, I have fired people from my child's case. I have done it on many occasions. I don't do it lightly. I don't do it willy-nilly, but there have been people that I have said, I'm sorry, you don't work with us anymore. I have fired people who work with my child at the school setting. And said, because all you have to do to fire them, I mean, they're not fired from the school setting, but all you have to do is say to the people that you work with, the superintendent or whoever, the administrators, and say, you know, this person is not on my child's case anymore. It helps if you have given comments beforehand and said, this is what isn't working with this individual and I need this dealt with. You know, you have the ability to do that. But if you do 2 or 3 of those and they're not doing it, you just go, I'm not working with this person anymore. They are not welcome at our meetings. They are not welcome to interact with my child. That's not working. Feel free to fire people. If they don't have it together for you and they don't believe in the same, you know, I have said to people, if you don't believe that my child can be helped, there is no room for you here. And if you're not willing to walk down that path with me, then have a really nice life. Don't let the door hit you in the backside on the way out. Right? I have no patience for people who don't think that our kids are awesome. Let them go. Let them go down their merry, dark little path. We have work to do, and it's not with them. Right? And there are other people who want to work with you. Find them, but let them go. So that's my word for the day. Fire staff that isn't working for you. Everybody will love that. Only when it's appropriate and only when they've demonstrated that they cannot or will not learn, right? We don't fire our kids if they're not getting something right. So we don't fire officials if they're not getting something right. We say this is what needs to be worked on. But for adults who are getting paid for something, if you've been told this is what you need to do and we've given you opportunity and we've given you the training, if you can't or won't do it, bye-bye. End of story. All right. I got a little hepped up there. It's time to go to the A word. This is the amazing ongoing documentary that's being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. They're following Jack Riley, a wonderful little boy who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. At this point in the series, Jack Riley is, I believe, he's about to turn 4 or just turned 4. He must be 4. He's going to preschool. And he's learned so much. So let's drop in on this family and see what's happening on the A word, and we'll be back after that.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi there, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome to the show. So the goal of today, we're going to make meatballs. Let's get started. So again, I'm going to take roughly a pound of my ground organic turkey, and I'm going to add in the secret vegetable. So if your kid doesn't like vegetables, don't cook in front of them, okay? Have them watch a movie or something. But you definitely want to make sure they're not watching, because then they won't eat it. So, and here we go with the egg. And our breadcrumbs. I'm just adding salt and pepper to taste. If you think about kids' shapes and sizes, you want to think small shapes, small hands. So your oven should be preheating at about 400 degrees. We're going to kick into the oven here and look at our meatballs. I did flip them halfway through the 20-odd minute. So we'll put just like Julia Child's. There's our finished product right there. These are good. Cooking is easy. You don't have to be afraid of it. But we want to hear from you. If you can let us know what recipes are important to you, maybe convert a recipe from a traditional flour or gluten-based to a gluten-free or an allergy-free, we're here to help. So you get to us, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. You can reach out on Facebook at facebook.com/autismlive or reach out at Taka Now. So I know you're having a great day. I had a lot of fun cooking with you in the kitchen, but I'll tell you, before we end, I gotta have more meatballs. Have a great day.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
At 9:00, you go potty, and then you can have the iPod after you go potty.
First, we have to go. No, later we can go party.
If you do it really fast with no crying, you can play with the iPod.
Again.
Okay? But if you cry and you do it slow, no iPod. All right? He has to use the bathroom with no behaviors and do it not really fast, but in a good amount of time versus lagging and crying and tantruming and prolonging what he has to do. And if he does it quickly and fast, he gets his reinforcer. If he doesn't, then he doesn't get his reinforcer, so he learns. We're hoping he learns it the next time. If he does it quick with no behaviors, then he gets what he wants every time. So we're gonna try to go past that hump like you did with everything else, like the feeding, and if you remember that, and the safety and the walking outside, like all of that. So this is just a little bump in the road. I think will be cool. So we'll see how that goes today. Hopefully it'll go good. It's 9:00. Let's see if we can do it fast, and then you can have the iPod. Let's do it.
There you go. Does somebody get to play iPod?
Yeah.
Hey, did you do the potty with no crying?
No.
No crying, right? And did you do it fast or slow?
Fast.
Yay! So what do you get?
iPod.
Yay! I hear someone. Hi. Who is it?
Hi, Diana.
Hi.
What brings you here today, Diana?
I just wanted to come and see Jack Riley and make sure everything was going smoothly.
And how often does that happen?
I try to come out and see Jack Riley once a month during a home session.
You're playing with the iPad.
I have to make sure I get all your learning stuff in here.
I made a jack-o'-lantern. No, what'd you make?
Elephant.
You made an elephant! So cool, Jack. Yeah, so with Mom and Dad, the bathroom occurrence with behavior just still happening. But we did it with Dad today. It was a lot better.
Dad did it? Okay, good.
But nonetheless, it still happens when we're not here. So I was thinking maybe we can fan ourselves out and just be outside the bathroom.
How much prompting does he need to actually get through, like, the motions? Is it getting through the motions, or is it just the behaviors?
Behaviors.
Yeah.
He can do everything.
He can do
himself.
it. Are you doing that nicely or not nicely?
Doing it nicely.
I don't think so. You're crying. So are you doing it nicely or not very nicely?
Not very nicely.
Yeah. When you wash your hands, should you be crying or not crying?
Not crying.
You know what? I want you to show me how you wash your hands nicely. Okay? Let's go.
That was so much better. Jack Riley, that was awesome. That was so good.
Do you want to go upside down? Yeah. Okay. No crying when you're going potty. Okay? Are we gonna work on it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. I know, that's the point. That's the point. Again? So let's play with that. So let's take videos of him going potty. Well, it'll kind of be a baseline. So if he cries, if he gets upset, review the video with him afterwards. And then talk to him about if it was nicely or not nicely, and then try again. Okay. And we can keep reviewing the videos.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have with us our very special guest, Angela Persicke is here with us. We didn't have you here last week because there were lots of other things going on, and we had Dr. Amanda Adams with us. She was awesome.
Yeah,
and you know
amazing.
a little bit about her.
Yes, she was my professor in my master's program at Fresno State.
That's a very cool thing. And that was my first time meeting her. She was absolutely lovely and such a wealth of information. It was so exciting to hear from her the kinds of things that she was doing in her model classroom to take so that kids could take that and go into a classroom at a school as prepared as possible.
Exactly.
And you and I have been talking a little bit about how important it is that people get the right training.
Yes.
Yes, we've been talking about that. And there is this pervasive thing, I think, in a lot of schools, certainly by no stretch of the imagination, all of them. But I know from being a former school teacher that there is this idea that we throw people into the deep end of the swimming pool. When I started teaching, I was a teacher under the No Child Left Behind Act, so my degree was not in education. But I got thrown into a classroom that had kids in it that had IEPs and that had individual difficulties that needed to be addressed, and there was no orientation to how do you deal with challenging behavior, how do you deal with this particular, in fact, in most cases, I was not allowed to know what the diagnosis was of the individual. I was just given the IEP. And if the parent didn't disclose, I didn't get to know what this child had a diagnosis of. So I couldn't even go and research and say, okay, what kinds of techniques work with X, Y, or Z, because I didn't know. Frustrating.
Very frustrating. And I see this, it's very common, actually, you know more than anyone, that you have to expect that no one's going to be prepared for this. You have to expect that on the first day of school, nothing is really going to be organized, or trainings aren't going to have been completed. And my one point to start out with is that as a parent, you almost have to be the one to make sure that the teacher, the classroom, the aides are given some notice or prepared, and that they have somewhat of an idea what's going on, because expecting everyone to just know what to do on the very first day, it just doesn't happen very often.
And it's been my experience, both as a teacher and as a parent sending a school to teacher, that people will say to you, oh yeah, this person has experience with this or that, but our kids are individual. So I agree with you. I think it is our job number one, to make sure that we know that the setting that our child is going into, that the people who are there know what's going on. Now, I think it's different for different people, and I think everybody has to make their own decision about whether you disclose what the diagnosis is. There are many of you who are out there who've decided not to tell your child's teacher that they have autism, and I think if you've thought that through and made that decision, that's great.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with making that decision. And I may make that decision later on in life. In junior high, that might be my case. Right now, it is I have shouted it from the rooftops because I want to make sure that everybody knows, because I still am in the place of wanting to make sure that my child is safe, and I think that there are still some things to be concerned about there.
Exactly, and of course that is everybody's decision to make, or every parent out there, that's your own decision to make. But really, it's about talking to the teacher ahead of time and making sure they understand the IEP goals, making sure they understand the type of setting the child has been in the previous year. Even has the child ever been in a typical classroom setting? Has the child had assistance, an aide in the classroom for the past 3 years, and maybe this is the first time there's no aide in the classroom? The teacher needs to know these things, and sometimes they're not readily available to the teachers.
Yeah, and we've had other people on the show talking about the fact that sometimes the IEP, you're there at the meeting, and a lot of times you have the IEP meeting before the teacher is decided, so they're not at the IEP meeting when all those things get discussed. The IEP gets signed and it gets put in a drawer somewhere. somewhere, and sometimes the teacher doesn't even have direct access to it, but let alone all the other people that your child interacts with. So we've had some people suggest that you make a copy of the IEP and put it in a sheet protector and give it to each person that your child interacts with.
I think that's a great idea.
And I think, you know, doing that with the BIP is a bigger idea.
Yes.
Because I care about what my child is learning, but I don't know. I have an expectation as a former teacher that and maybe this is wrong, you know, because not everybody does their job the way they're supposed to, but I have an expectation that the teachers are concerned with the learning that's happening anyway. And I think the vast majority of teachers are. But knowing what to do for the challenging behavior, I know for a fact, having been in classrooms, that teachers don't get enough training.
No, they don't. Not at all. And it's very unfortunate. And there are a lot of movements within the field of behavior analysis to do in-service trainings for teachers in schools. And most schools now have a BCBA, but they're usually for an entire district, which is a lot of schools to have to visit and do in-service trainings, and it's a lot more difficult than you would think. Why can't these people just be trained properly? And it's a lot more difficult. There are a lot of things, and so this is where giving them the BIP and maybe even as the parent, unfortunately this is not supposed to be the parent's job, but maybe even explaining to them what the BIP is meant for, and what you're actually supposed to do. And it's unfortunate that the parent has to be put in that position to do that, but you also want what's best for your kid at that moment, and you can't expect that everyone will be trained who will be interacting with your child.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we had talked about today, you were going to give us some tips about things just in general back to school, things to get us ready, get our kids ready, and to make it more conducive. So I've sort of run over all those things, but tell us some of the things that you would love in an ideal world for us to have the opportunity to do.
Okay, so like we've been talking about, contact the teacher, talk to the teacher, make sure the teacher knows about the IEP and like what we're saying in the BIP, and if the child if it's a typical classroom and inclusion setting, and the child has an aide or doesn't have an aide, make sure the teacher is aware of the percentage of time the child should be included, if it's only for a certain amount. So all these things that are in the IEP, just talk to the teacher about first before going back to school or within the first week of school. We're already about a week or two in for some schools.
Yes.
So if you haven't done that already, you should probably contact the teacher and just have a conversation about it. But for kids who are starting back, a lot of the first few weeks, maybe even a month or two of school is a lot of review from the previous year. And so if there were things that were missed in the previous year or that your child had a difficult time with, spend a little bit of time with your child on these skills. So maybe there were some things that they're reviewing right now that maybe your child forgot over summer, or just that were more difficult. Put that into a schedule to work with your child on, in addition to whatever else the school is providing for homework. And with that, also make sure you provide a structured schedule for your child, so that and we use a lot of times visual schedules or journals. Planners are always good too for children that are more into the school age, a little bit higher. To help the child to see what I'm supposed to be doing, because you're in this transition from summer, everything that's different about summer, maybe waking up later, maybe going to camp instead of school, half days, a lot of play dates, to this very structured, I have to go to school from this time to this time and then come home after, do homework, eat dinner, go to bed.
Yeah.
So it's much more structured, and so getting your child getting your child better able to transition to that, using visual schedules or planners are really great. And so your child can actually look, okay, this is what I'm doing from this time to this time. And sometimes even remove that from the schedule or cross it off the schedule, which is really great. Okay. And then you can build in some of this review time with your child. So if you have skills that you need to review, you can build that into the schedule. So maybe you spend this much time on homework, do a little bit of time with your child reviewing some specific things, and then whatever else you have during your day. That's always really helpful, and it's really helpful to have your child try to plan these schedules on his or her own as well, some self-management skills, so that you're not always prompting your child to do it as well.
And the visual schedule will help us to do that.
Yes.
Great advice.
So,
right, we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back and talk some more about some other things that we can do to get our kids ready.
Okay.
All right, stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mands, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. With us in the studio right now, our very special guest, Angela Persicke. She is a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst with experience working with children on the autism spectrum. You also are very involved in research. You are the assistant director of the Autism Research Group. Very impressive credentials for someone as young as you. But that thrilling for us to be able to have you here on a pretty much weekly basis to be able to pick your brain. And so we've been talking about things that we can do to get our kids ready to go back to school. And you already gave us some great tips about making sure that we're talking to the teachers, knowing what's going on, giving our kids a visual schedule of what their day is going to look like. I love the idea of that so that they can get it. I always say, you know, we hate it when we're driving in a car and we're the one behind the wheel and somebody else is holding the directions and they give them out sparingly. Like, you're going to go down here and you're going to take a left. A left on what? Can I I know beforehand, before I'm 500, I get crabby.
Yep.
And I think about our kids, how miserable would it be for us if we woke up and had no idea what the day was going to look like?
Yeah.
I would not be a happy camper.
I would not either.
And so why do we expect them to just go with the flow? And we say, they're not good at transitioning. I just want you to go from this, but nobody told them.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point to make, is that none of us would be happy not knowing. Like, if I woke up this morning and someone was telling me at the time I needed to do something different, that I needed to change.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Okay, it's time to work on this. Like, it wouldn't be very pleasant. So that's a really, really good point to make, and something to consider if you're a parent out there, and a teacher too. If you're a teacher out there, something to really consider is that that our kids especially have difficulty transitioning and changes of schedules and not knowing what's happening, and just the flexibility is sometimes very difficult for our kids. And so teaching them or giving them a visual schedule, or some type of, for the older kids, a planner or something like that, is really great, but also teaching them how to determine what they are going to do themselves that day.
Yes.
Is a really great skill, because that's what we all do now.
Right.
we all very well use self-management procedures to make sure we know what we're doing for the entire day.
Yeah, and I know, you might be listening and going, well, that doesn't apply to my child because of where their skills are. That doesn't apply to my child because of what their age is. But stop for a second and consider that you can, with a 2-year-old, they begin to work on doing, I don't remember what you guys call it, where you have, is it a play circle, where they go from toy to toy, where they set it up with visual
PlayStations.
PlayStations, that's the term. That with a very small child, they'll, get them to play with certain toys so that they know how to use a toy, and then they'll set up PlayStations with a visual schedule and say, first you're going to play with the Barbie, then you're going to go play with the tea set, then you're going to go play with this, and then, this and so happens, to teach children how to transition from something, and then eventually included on that schedule is then you get to choose what you want to play with, so that they learn how to, that you're actually teaching them how to transition from thing to thing, and how to make a decision about how I'm going to use my time. Now, for all of you out there who have 14-year-olds that you've written in and said all he ever wants to do is play this game online, right? There's an older version of how you can do that, but think about how great it would have been for you if you could have done that with that child when he was 2.
Yeah.
So for everybody else who's out there and you have the 2-year-old and they're going, well, planner has nothing to do with me. I want you to realize that you can start really early on these skills and work up to the point where you're working in the planner.
And if anyone listening out there is confused about what we mean when we talk about a visual schedule, it's really just pictures of what, like the item or activity. So maybe it will be a picture of Legos, or something like that. And a lot of times we use just construction paper and Velcro, and we laminate it, and then just post the little items up on it and have the child actually rip it off the schedule and maybe put it in an envelope or something. For like that's a simple version of a visual schedule that we use a lot. And so it's not anything extravagant. Sometimes I've even drawn pictures for kids, or just written it out if they're able to read. Just on a piece of paper, wrote the words of the activity. So first this, then number 2 will be homework, and number 3 video games.
Yeah, it allows you a whole lot of creativity, whatever works best for you, because you can draw a picture, or think about this for a second, of all the different ways that you could do it. With a Lego, you could just take a Lego and glue it to card and put it up there and say, first you're going to do this. One of the things that we did eventually, I got a digital camera at one point, and I was asked to take pictures of things, and we noticed how well Jem responded when he could see a picture of something, an actual picture of the actual thing. So I went around with a digital camera and took pictures of different toys, and there's a way, most stores now that do digital stuff, you can upload the pictures to that store and pick it up there 15 minutes later for 19 cents. So, consider you take a picture of 5 toys, and then you just have the pictures up there, and you can take that tacky, it looks like gum, and put it up on the wall that way so that it comes down afterwards. You don't even have to do the Velcro.
Yeah.
There are a million ways that you could do this, but to show pictures. You could even do it on your tablet. You don't even have to get it done at Walmart. Take a picture of 5 things and put them in a template saying, first you're going to do this, then you're going to do this. You can even have the child swipe them away when they're done. But it gives that visual before they can read. I mean, now sometimes with Jem, I just write it on a piece of paper and say, first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. And I don't have to put a picture of it because he understands the text of it. But I came across some pictures recently that were of him doing therapy. We turned our dining room into the therapy room. And so there was stuff hanging on the walls, and it would always change. And there was one thing where Jem said, what's that? And it was a visual schedule that he had that we used for like 6 months. And then, you know, and it had Mickey Mouse all over it. And then that got changed out for one that had Lego things on it, you know? So it was what was exciting to him.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a really good point to make too, is that you want the child to be a little excited too about using the visual schedule. So whatever you could do to make that visual schedule exciting, if the tablet is fun and swiping the items, I know there are a lot of time management apps that you use that have timers built in for each activity, which is amazing. And we didn't have that. We had to like use our little clocks. But so anything like that is really, really great to use and really helps. And if your child is able to, if your child can get to the point where he or she is able to do these himself and set up the schedule himself or herself, this is it's really helpful down the line too.
Absolutely. Teaching great skills.
Yeah, so those are all really great to have as just, you know, to determine what the child is going to do during the day. Another thing that I really want to talk about is these executive function skills that our children often have deficits in, which include like attention and planning, memory, problem solving, flexibility, things like that that are really important for the classroom. Yeah. So if your child is in a classroom and you're seeing that there's a lot of, or the teacher is seeing that there's a lot of disorganization, the child doesn't know when to do what or what page they're on if they're reading a book, what the child should be focusing on, if it's the teacher or at that point is it his own materials. Is your child having difficulty following these like 3 to 4 step instructions? Go to your backpack, get your book out, open it to this page and start reading, which is very common in a classroom, especially if your child is moving into an inclusion setting. These skills, these executive function skills, are very important and are often if your child is not attending to the right things, then you might start to see some problem behavior as well. And so it's important to assess if these are problems for your child. Are there deficits in planning? And does your child have difficulty actually planning what to get out for a specific project? If it's like an art project in class and they say, okay, go get all the materials you need to make this art project. Can your child actually determine what materials are needed for what point and gather all those together to start the project? Sometimes some other skills that we may, or some behaviors we may see, may be a result of these, and so it's important to assess if these are a problem, and you can work on these different skills at home with your child as well. Yeah. If it's a typical education setting, there might not be an IEP goal even for this, even to actually do this in the setting. And teachers often just expect the children to be able to follow these instructions and to plan and to gather all the materials. And so if the teacher is reporting that your child seems disorganized, this might be a problem.
I just had an epiphany. I really did. Like the lights went on, and because as you were talking about it, I was thinking, you know, this is the mistake I made as a parent and that I made all along, and that autism taught me that I couldn't make in terms of my child, but now I'm making it in terms of the teachers. That idea that somebody's just going to learn something organically. I think because there are times that it does happen, and we should go woohoo when that happens. That's a wonderful thing. But we have to let go of the notion and stop assuming that our child is going to organically organically just pick something up.
Yep.
So we can teach planning,
Yes.
we can teach organization, we can teach focus, but we have to go back to the earliest step where they're missing it.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing for the teachers and the aides and the administrators. We can't assume that someday they're just going to organically learn that this is how you work with kids who have this issue going on, and that this issue is not the same as this kid who has the same diagnosis that has this issue.
Exactly.
We can't assume that. We are going to have to teach our kids step by step, just like we're going to have to teach our teachers, our aides, and our administrators, go back to the beginning, the last step that they can't, the first step where they can't get it.
And also,
but we can. We can teach these
yeah,
things.
we can teach it, and we know how to teach it, and it's the same as what we do with a lot of our skills, like modeling, prompting, practice, and reinforcement.
Yeah.
You know, our principles that we follow for almost everything. But one thing to be aware of, especially if you're a teacher or an aide in a classroom, or you're a parent wondering why your child isn't learning these, like gathering materials, or even learning that I have to take this book home because I have homework from it.
Right.
If your child is consistently having problems with this, it may be because the aide or the teacher continues to just prompt your child through it.
Yeah, and prompting is not the same thing as teaching.
No, exactly, and this probably occurs much more than we'd hope, because in a classroom there is a structure. You have to get things done in a certain amount of time, and then move on to the next activity. Right. And so a lot of times the teacher or the aide doesn't have enough time to sit there and practice one specific skill of, okay, go to your backpack, get your book, open to this page, and start reading more than once.
Yeah.
You know, because they have to move on to the activities. So if you're as a parent seeing this, you might want to start practicing some of these skills more at home.
Right, and I think that's another key important thing, is that there are some things that we can take the time to teach the teacher how to teach our child, and that's literally what we're talking about, teaching the teacher how to teach the child these skills. There are some things you can just teach at home.
Yeah.
Take it outside of the environment and work on that with your child to teach them, okay, here is what we need to do, that when the teacher says, and you can even make another little visual schedule about when the teacher says your homework is this, here are the questions I have to ask myself. What book do I need to bring home in order to do that? You know, do I need to make sure that the book gets in my backpack, and does it go on top of my lunch? You know what I mean? Whatever the criteria ends up being. I think it's a really interesting thing. It just reminds me how much more we have to teach teachers. Teachers are great. I love teachers. I've worked with a lot of great teachers, and I think they're remarkable people, and I say that all the time. I think that they're angels that walk this earth, and they're interested in learning, the good ones. They really are. But that doesn't mean that they're going to find this stuff on their own, and we just have to give them access to the right stuff.
And you have to remember, too, that teachers, a lot of times, especially if we're talking about teachers who are teaching a typical education classroom, they have students every year that seem to learn organically, There's, you know, there are these things that, like, especially the executive function skills, a lot of teachers don't see that they need to teach that. It's just like, oh, this child is just so disorganized, and then they just label the child disorganized and they prompt them through it.
Right.
Instead of looking at these skills as what you can teach, because they're so used to all these students that don't need to necessarily learn those in their specific classroom.
Right.
So noticing where your child is having some deficits, and especially in the executive functioning skills, because when it comes to like problem solving too, that is relevant for social problems as well. And so that won't just be at the desk in the classroom where there is some problem solving skills the child will have to use, but out on the playground as well. And so all of these skills need to be assessed in some way, and unfortunately there aren't a lot of assessments out there that actually target these skills. So just pay attention to how the teacher maybe refers to your child. Like I said, is the teacher saying, oh, he's somewhat disorganized. Oh, he has a hard time remembering what we're doing. He doesn't know what to when to attend to who or what in the classroom. So these kind of words that are thrown out that seem like, oh, they sometimes seem like, oh, that's like a problem inherent in the child. Oh, he's attention deficits, sometimes. And it's like, no, these can actually be taught. And but look for these words, because if those words are being thrown out, you can actually work on some of these skills at home.
Yeah, my question always is, so what are we doing about that? When they say, well, we're noticing this, this, and this, I always say, so what are we doing about that? And that kind of separates, I hate the phrase, but the men from the boys. Yeah. And an example, just as we were talking about the executive functions things, every year for my son's school, I go into the 4th grade and I direct over a period of a couple of months a play with the 4th grade class. And I go in first and do an orientation with the kids and talk about what we're going to do. And usually the second or third time that I come in, the kids, they have so many questions because they didn't know what questions to ask in the beginning, but they have so many questions. And in 4th grade, it's very typical. And I come in about halfway into the year, so they're really truly 4th graders at that point. But the kids will all come in and I'll walk in and they all immediately run up to me and start asking me 1,008 questions. They've left their desk, broken all the rules that the teacher has in place, left the desk, oh, Mrs. Penrod, this, can I, and then they'll ask me the same question that they asked me the week before, and what about this, or they're obsessing about whatever, and that's usually the class that I come in and I go, okay, so we have some new rules now, that here, and I introduce it like it's this thing I just thought of, but we do this every year, and the teachers love it when I come in and do this, because they go, okay, I know you have questions, and I know you have things that you want to ask, but here now are the 3 rules that you have to ask yourself before you raise your hand to ask the question. Do I need to ask this question right now? Is the first question that you're going to ask yourself. Has somebody already asked this question? And have I written this question down so that I can ask it at a more appropriate time? And I say to them, from now on, there are no questions allowed until I say, does anybody have any questions? And you don't get to ask the question unless you've written it down, because this is what happens is that I'll go and go, okay, Jimmy, it's your turn. What's your question? Because he's been, right? And I go, Jimmy, what's your question? He goes, I don't remember, right? We've all been in that situation. And when I used to teach college, I would always say, to college students, take your notes, but in the side, as the lecture is going on, make your notes of what questions, because I might get to it in the lecture, but if I don't, I will always take questions at the end. And I was always taught as a student that that's the proper way to take your notes. Ask your questions, and then, if it gets made, you can draw a line. The question gets answered, draw a line to it. But otherwise, you lose your questions. You forget, what was the question that I wanted to ask? 4th grade is the perfect time to start to institute that. Are they going to be able to do it? No. No, but it's a great time to start it so that when it happens, when I answer somebody's question, then I go to the next person and they've written it down, and I praise them for writing it down. I go, so what's the question? They ask the question, and it's the question I just answered. All the kids now are listening to it, and they go, she just answered that question. It's a way of keeping the kids present, but giving them that checklist of, here are the 3 things you're going to do before you ask a question. And when they raise their hand when it's not appropriate time, and I ask them, I say, have you already thought through those 3 things? Oh no, I didn't think through those 3. But so that by the time I leave after 3 months, they're pretty much adhering to that.
Yeah, that's such a great that's so great to use in the classroom. I wish more teachers would start that in 4th grade and in general in their classrooms, because you start to see a lot of these kids who have deficits in inhibition and cannot stop themselves. They have a question and they either call out every single time, or they just raise their hand every 5 seconds. And with our kids, we get to a point where we're so happy that they're raising their hand to ask a question, but then they don't think these other things through, like, that this question was just answered and I haven't even thought of that. But we get to a point where the child is still doing the correct behavior that we ask for, raising their hand instead of calling out. But sometimes we have to change reinforcement to differentially reinforce questions that haven't been asked before, and having your child think of these things like, okay, so if I ask this question, has it been answered? No. Okay, then do I remember it? Okay, now I can ask this question. requires some inhibition.
It does. It requires, yeah, absolutely. We two things. First of all, I don't know why, but I got bumped offline for a second, and so the live feature is now live again. But somebody wrote in and said, "Hello, girlfriends. Quick question: what means learning organic?" I love that, because if we ever use a term here that you don't know what we're talking about, I love it when you ask. So, what do we mean by what? And you can say what you mean, and I'll say what I mean, because I don't know that we necessarily mean the same thing.
Yes. When I talk about learning organically, it's we're referring to a child just picking it up without specific training. So like gathering materials. Sometimes we just assume that children will understand how to do this, and a lot of times some children do. They just don't have as many deficits in planning and gathering materials, organizing, and it seems like it just appears, like it just is learned and there was no teaching involved.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to give an example, because I have a niece who has a daughter who's completely neurotypical, and I went to visit at their house when she was 3, and they had those high efficiency washer dryer things that mystify me. I didn't know how to use them. Now I'm there with my son, who's 6 at the time, and she's 3, and I went to put stuff in the washer, and I had no idea how to turn the washer on, and I'm looking for the buttons and doing whatever, and the 3-year-old comes over and she says, "You got to do this," and she pushes all the buttons and she does it. Now my niece comes home and I go, "Wow, your 3-year-old knows how to run the washer. I can't believe that you already..." I have a friend who has an 18-year-old who she's having to neurotypical, having to teach him how to do clothes and how to run the washer, and not a high efficiency one. And I said, "I can't, did you teach her?" And she says, no. She just saw me do it, and she picked it up on her own. She knows how to run all the appliances at 3, right? My son's not going to pick that up. Now, for my son, using the smartphone, I need a class to use the smartphone to know how to do it, but my son just goes through it. He hasn't seen a class. He has no idea. I don't even know if he picked it up through observation or whatever, but it's intuitive for him. He can just do it, and I sit there and I go, "How do you know that?" He says, "I just know that," right? And I don't know where he got it from, but nobody trained him, and I need training on using the smartphone. And I think all of us have things that we just pick up. We learn them organically. It just happens. It wasn't fertilized, right? But there are always things that we're going to have to stop and figure out, and some things that we have to take even step by step.
Yeah.
If you're going to teach me how to crochet, we're going to have to really go step by step. I mean, we're really going to have to go to finite things to get it. But there are other things that, I pick them up along the way. All of us are like that. And we have this assumption. I mean, I think that one of the biggest surprises for me with autism was realizing the miracle of children learning spoken language. That it just happens. And I know people, when we tear it apart, we realize that kids have been reinforced, and the baby goes blah, 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 and mom's like, yes, and that's reinforcement. But it seems like this thing that just unfolds, and kids just all of a sudden, they're saying words, and then all of a sudden they're saying sentences, and all of a sudden they're saying paragraphs, and it's that miracle that we all take for granted.
Yeah, and it just seems like magic, especially if you've been working with children with autism for so long, and then you start to interact with like a neurotypical 2-year-old, and it's
and you hear them talk, and you hear the way in which they use language, and you realize what you didn't have. Now, and that's crushing. I could just cry right now. But I would say to you that the thing that I learned as an autism parent that we could all learn is that the beauty of it is that you appreciate the miracle when it happens. That the first time that my son ever said a sentence, I called everybody I knew. And I think that, most parents, the child says something, they're like, "Oh, that's great," and they go on with their day. So I get to appreciate the miracles that happen, and sort of get to see the man behind the curtain of how that happens along. But and my kid learns a lot of things organically now, but I can't assume that if he's not doing something, if the backpack is always a mess, I can't assume that just someday he's going to get it. And the light bulb will go off. That's something that I got to go in and teach, or have somebody else teach.
Especially if you hear that the child should be learning this because they do it every day in class and everything, and even then it sometimes requires much more practice. And if your child has to do it every day in class and is still having difficulties with it, you need to go back and look at what are the skills involved and what is my child actually missing, because there is something there that is missing that can be taught, and it might change the whole picture of things, and all of a sudden your child is organized and organizing the
materials. It is amazing. It is amazing. The example that I go to is that a couple of years ago, my son, every day that I would pick him up from school and I would bring him home, and we were in an apartment that we would have to park across the street from the apartment and cross this very busy street to get into the apartment, and it was getting him out of the car with his backpack and onto the sidewalk where neither one of us was going to be hit by a car. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I just thought I was going to lose my mind, and I would say, why are you taking so long? Like, just move. Can we just go? And then I realized, oh my gosh, I have to go through all the steps of what it takes to get out of the car and figure out where is he missing it. And it actually ended up being a couple of steps that he was missing, that he did not know. Like, I needed to give him a primer. I needed to say, 30 seconds and then we're going to get out of the car. I needed to teach him the fluency of being able to pick up the backpack, and because there's a thing of, picking up the backpack and dealing with the door and moving your feet at the same time that requires a certain amount of, having it together, dexterity, fluency, and he didn't have it. So we had to park on a street where it didn't matter and practice getting out of the car, grabbing the backpack, getting out and doing it quickly and taking it down step by step into, okay, let's just see if we can just grab the backpack. Now let's see if we can just deal with the door. Now let's see if we can deal with the backpack and the door. Now when we get that, let's do the backpack, the door, and your feet moving at the same time.
That's another thing we take for granted is that's something that seems so automatic to us now.
Right.
Is something that requires a lot of steps, and some people have to actually learn each of the steps, and if one or two or several of the steps are missing, sometimes it just looks like a disaster. And you sit there just wondering what is going on, why can't this just work? And because it's so easy for us to just grab our things and get out of the car and do 10 other things, text at the same time. But it's you mentioned a very key point. It's fluency. It's being able. It's not just knowing that I have to pick this up and then move my feet and then grab the handle and do all these things. It's doing them fluently.
And the coordination. That's the word I was looking for, coordination. Coordinating all of those things with the fluency. Excuse me. Hard. Very hard.
And sometimes we have to actually sit in the car with our child and say, okay, 30 seconds. All right, let's go, and see how fast we can get to the point where it's coordinated and the child is actually getting out of the car pretty quickly.
And there's the reinforcement part of it too, reinforcing it, because what I was doing was the exact opposite. So I was getting out of the car and screaming, "We're going to get hit by a car and we're going to die. You need to move faster than that," which wasn't working. Oddly enough. So instead, going to a place where that wasn't an option, and praising him for it, so that he could see, oh, it's so much more pleasant. Mom is so much more pleasant and not screaming at me that we're going to die. Parenting.
And sometimes you need to, these seem like drills, and we don't, a lot of times you hear the word like drill and kill, of doing it quick over. But we don't really do that. It's more about practicing over and over, but including the reinforcement component and making a game out of it. Kids love games, so let's see how fast you can do it now. And even something down to going out the door, getting the shoes on. Because sometimes I see kids and they take 5 to 10 minutes to get their shoes on, and it's something that maybe requires some of this practice, this fluency training, where you just okay, let's here we go. Here's the timer. Let's go. See how fast fast you can do it, and really make a fun game out of it instead of like this, okay, we're doing it again, all right.
Yeah, and it's amazing, like you can do that with one thing and get it with one thing, and you don't see how you can apply it to so many other things. That we certainly, for years, I've done this with getting Jem up in the morning, that Dad always does a thing with him about they're going to race to get to the bathroom and see who can get to the bathroom first, because it gets Jem up and out of the bed. And my husband is a comedic actor who, you know, is hilarious. And the things that he does every morning, he puts on a full performance for, you know, the run, and oh, he beat me again. And, you know, my husband will do these pratfalls where he falls on the ground and he's like, oh no, and very dramatic. And my son thinks it's hilarious, and he'll get up for it. You know, he literally will get up out of bed to see Dad do this performance.
That's so great.
You know, I don't know what happens later on as my husband gets older and Jem gets older, but it's working now, and that's all that matters. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, so many things to think of. We pretty much need to say goodbye. Any last thoughts of things that we can be working on?
Just to sum it up, you want to prepare and make sure everybody on your child's IEP team is prepared, the teacher, the aides, everyone, know everyone, be in full communication with your teacher, practice at home, and try to identify some of these skills that might be missing. When you're looking at classroom behaviors.
Absolutely. But we don't just let the status quo go.
No.
We're always working to get that much better, ourselves and our kids, and get our teachers that much better, our aides that much better. It's progress.
Yes.
Progress is the watchword, right? Thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to having you back with us next week. We are going to take a break and come back and finish out the show, so stick with us.
Ready, guys? Cameras up. And action.
This is the second year of our Act a Day for Military Families Inclusion Film Camp, led by Joey Travolta with our fabulous partners, Cox Communications.
One of the wonderful things about this camp is that it allows these children to have a voice that they otherwise would not have. And it is a story of how lives can be transformed, new friends can be found, and they can excel in the right kind of learning environment.
Quiet on the set is a term we use when we need quiet. Filmmaking is about communication, and if everybody's talking over each other, you can't communicate.
Everything that has to do with filmmaking goes into everyday life. So we use filmmaking as a vehicle to teach them to work together as a team and give them social skills and confidence.
What if we try something different and see if we like it better or not?
What about ghosts?
Want to try ghosts?
Yeah.
These kids, they all make a film from conception through the writing process, developing their own ideas. Then we write the script, we cast it, shoot it, edit it. At the end of the day, we end up with a realized project.
All right.
With kids on the autism spectrum, you never know what you're going to get. There's a lot of unpredictability, and so our staff is there to help provide sort of a comfort, a sense of ease, to try to be flexible within the Inclusion Film Camp, because they're asking the kids to do a lot of things that they may be uncomfortable doing or that might be new to them.
Film is reality. It's what we do every day, right? And I'm realistically talking to you. And I'm having a conversation about cinema, which we all love. That's why we're here at this film camp.
The theme this year is the Inclusion Network. So what it is, it's like a TV network. So we have TV shows, we have movies, there'll be little news segments, we have TV commercials. They came up with some really great ideas.
Hey, here comes Joey to hear the pitch today. Hey, how's it going? I'm sorry. Molly, I'm Joey. Nice to meet you. So explain the idea.
Our movie is about a corporation, and the four main characters, Fury, Death, War, and Strife, are former employees.
You know what? If someone came in and said their name was Fury or Death or Strife, that would send up a red flag right away. It's probably why they're not working anymore. Go ahead.
Exciting thing about this collaboration, you have the core, which is Act Today for the military, which is how this whole thing started, and then the support of Cox Communication, because we didn't know whether we would be able to do this again this year. But they band together, they saw the importance of the program, and they're able to really have something special for the community. I mean, this being in the San Diego Film Festival as a special screening is huge.
Okay, let's have John come out there. Come on, John.
John loves this camp. It really gives him the hands-on time to work and to be among kids who have his interests.
John, how was this experience as you came all the way from Oregon to be in our film camp? Awesome! Awesome.
Michael happens to love making films, and he was so excited, and we saw a difference from day one. Michael, you want to say something about what this?
Did you love the camp?
Yes, I did very much.
I'm so glad you were able to do it this year. Would you come back next year?
Yes, I believe yes.
And how was your experience this year at film camp, Mackenzie?
It was very, very rewarding. I thought it was a great experience, and I hope to do it again next year.
Last year, after attending this camp, my son Mackenzie spoke in front of a group for the first time, and that was at school. And his teacher was so excited that she cried and then emailed me to tell me about it. So it was exciting. It's just one of those things that we've all gone through together. His growth has been phenomenal.
When you look at the challenges that occur when you have a special needs child in a family, but then you add on the military component of a deployed parent or relocation and the challenges that come with that, then it just starts to exasperate. And so if there's one space, one way that we can help a family here that belongs to the military, then we really can help change a life.
How many of you are military families? Raise your hand. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you do for our country. And we are there to help your kids. We'll be back next year. And I want to say that if they were casting a movie about superheroes, all of you would be the stars. You're all heroic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I just love seeing that video, and there's such an excitement in those young than them. And I do want to do a shout out. I know that there are many of you who don't have access because you don't live in San Diego or you're not a military family, so you don't have access to that particular camp. But I want you to know that Joey Travolta does camps around the country. You should go to his Inclusion Films site and see if it's something that your child can be in near you. And more sites are coming up around the world, really, that are Actors for Autism is another one that's here in Los Angeles. And different groups. We've had Elaine Hall on the show before, that she does an amazing program. They did Autism the Musical. More and more people are seeing that doing theater with kids on the autism spectrum in some way, shape, or form. I mean, at Joey Travolta's Inclusion Camp, they're acting, they're directing, they're editing, they're doing all of those things. But I think some sort of theater training for all of our kids is really empowering. I think that for everyone. I mean, that's my background. So, admittedly, I'm going to be partial, but even Temple Grandin has said how beneficial it is for kids to get acting training, and that it's perfect that kids on the spectrum are great actors because they understand, oh, you want me to portray this, and it helps them to be able to get different behaviors and try on different people. It's a wonderful thing. So I hope if you're out there, you'll get involved with it. It doesn't have to cost you a whole bunch of money. There are community theater groups out there center where you could probably go and volunteer some of your time and bring your child, and they'd be thrilled to have you. And you get involved with a community of people that it might be just what the doctor ordered, right? So consider that. But I also wanted to take a couple of seconds to take care of some business here. Because we didn't have Ashley Colas with us today for Great Stuff with Ashley. Ashley had brought in a couple of weeks ago a beautiful backpack, a really beautiful backpack, and we wanted to announce the winner of that backpack. It is Danielle Sharon Safel, I think is how you pronounce the last name. So thank you. That winner was chosen at random from all the people who wrote in and said that they wanted the backpack. So Danielle Sharon Safel, you have won the backpack. We'll be in touch with you. Whenever you win something at Autism Live, especially on our Facebook page, if we contact you, we will always say it here on the show, and then we'll contact you. But you do need to write us back and tell us your address. Don't do it to just anybody. Make sure that it's us. And if we haven't announced you as a winner, then we're not asking for your backpack. But do send us your address so that we can get your stuff off to you in a timely manner. Right now, you can be winning. Do we have it up on the Facebook page yet about the pencil grips, Emily? It's not up there yet. It's coming soon, the pencil grips. We've been so busy. We've had so many things to do. We have something exciting going on tomorrow after the show that I'm going to tell you about in just a second. In fact, one of the exciting things that I wanted to talk to you about here at the end of the show, and I know we're almost out of time, Emily is going to cycle through some of the ways you can get in touch with us. We have a new series that is happening, and it is available now only on YouTube. We're not going to show this content on the show. It's only available on YouTube. It's a new series called Parent to Parent, and it's me in very short format answering some of the questions that parents ask the most. Why is my child engaging in this in this behavior? Of course, there's 24 of them, and now they all escape my mind. What do I do about an IEP? How do I get my child to go to bed? How do I get my child to eat? These are questions that parents ask endlessly because they're part of our everyday, right? They're part of our existence. And so there's, really quick answers about here's how you want to look at this as a parent and how you can move the dial a little bit. So that's called Parent to Parent. Those are available right now on YouTube. When you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see that we have lots of different channels within the channel. That there's the channel just for Temple Grandin. There's just the channel for the cooking segments. There's, just Ask Dr. Doreen's, and you'll see that there's just the Parent to Parent channel. We've got a bunch more things like that coming, but that's YouTube exclusive content. So check them out. We'd love to know what you think. Be brutal. Tell me your honest opinion of them, whether they're useful to you or not. Would love to know, and share them. So all of that and more tomorrow. We're going to be here with you. Great show tomorrow. We've got Dr. Adele Nadowski, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. You guys have already written in some questions for him that we're going to make sure that he answers. And then afterwards tomorrow, we've got an outing. We'll tell you about it tomorrow. So stick with us tomorrow. We'll see you at 10 o'clock Pacific time. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.